my entire career, I've always wanted to just serve small business owners and help small business owners understand the financial side of their business, understand cash flow, so they can survive the worst possible scenarios as they are thrown at them.
Cares about small business owners and the impact on their community. He was raised by a small business owner, and he's seen the effort, commitment, and dedication it takes to grow a business. Tim Sernett. Welcome to the Build It to Billions podcast, where we guide successful entrepreneurs on their journey from millions to billions. We believe that the key to scaling your business and compounding your wealth starts every single day with the mindset and practice of stewardship over ownership and applying billionaire biblical principles. Our ultimate goal to help you scale and compound your wealth so that you can give more or all of it away to help MVPs. I'm your host today, Brett Swartz. In each and every episode, we feature some of the world's top entrepreneurs, millionaires, and billionaires. They share their principles, values, secrets, and wisdom, providing each of us with the insights we need to reach the next level of faith, success, and impact. I'm excited about our next guest. He is a CPA. He is the founder of Financial Optics, and he cares about small business owners and the impact on their community. He was raised by a small business owner, and he's seen the effort, commitment, and dedication it takes to grow a business. He understands that all the people who depend on the business owner, the family, the team, the customers, and even vendors, and he has a great respect for and high regard for small business owners. He's focused like a laser on the restaurant industry. Please welcome to the show with me, Tim Sernett, CPA. Hey, Tim, welcome to the show. How you doing?
Doing great, Brett. Happy to be here.
Excellent. Great to have you. And for our listeners to get to know you for the first time, would you give them a little bit more about your story and your current focus?
So our current focus is independently owned restaurants. So like you mentioned, I am a CPA, and my business has morphed in the last 3 years from being a full-service CPA firm, taxes included. I sold my tax book of business, and at the same time started to listen to all the marketing experts who've been telling me for 10 years, you need a niche, you need a niche, you need a niche. So at that time, we decided to niche towards a group of clients that we really enjoy working with, and a group of clients that really kind of represents who I want to help. And that's some of the hardest working small business owners out there. And it tends to be a family-owned business, so that's who we really want to help them understand the financial side of their business so they can grow towards more financial freedom in their business, as opposed to growing to a more overwhelming business as growth occurs. I don't know if that line makes sense or not to you.
It makes perfect sense to me. Yeah, I love it, Tim. So I love that you niche down, it sounds like, and you serve those, not only niching for business purposes, but serving for like where you felt called and where you felt like you connected most with these folks that were in the restaurant industry, right? Because I think a lot of people, they get stuck in not doing that, right? And they get stuck in like, just serving everyone all places, right? And I think you niching down was so important. So that's really neat. And before we dive into the topic at hand, which is building a restaurant to financial freedom, I do want to take one other step back. I believe we've all been given certain gifts in this life, and these gifts have been given to us to be a blessing and help to others. Some people call them strengths. Some people call them superpowers. I'm curious, Tim, growing up, what would you feel like is your gift that you've been really just great at? And how does it help how you help and bless people today?
The ability to look at the numbers of any business and help a business owner understand what the numbers are telling us and where maybe they're missing the opportunity to improve profits and cash flow, and really understanding, the top line revenue, how the costs fit into all that, and managing the overall expenses to produce a better bottom line profit. Most independently owned restaurants are typically in the 5, 6, 7% bottom line net income or worse, whereas the bigger boys are shooting for, the big conglomerates are shooting for 15 to 20% bottom line profit. So helping them understand, you're not necessarily doing a bad job, but you're missing opportunities to improve your bottom line and improve your lifestyle and improve your ability to sleep at night.
Excellent. Yeah. So it sounds like the language of numbers and profits, truly understanding where that is, what that looks like, and ways to you can make adjustments to be more profitable. Is that a fair summary, Tim?
Sure, absolutely.
Excellent. So with that in mind, let's talk about maybe the second secret. Maybe that's the first secret to building a restaurant to financial freedom. What would you say is like the next step once you have a really clear understanding of your numbers? Your teams help them, get where their profit margins are, their income and expenses, right? What's happening? What's the next big step to building a restaurant to financial freedom?
Well, I think the first step really is getting their finances arranged so that they really do understand where their costs are and where their gross profit margins are and where their bottom line net income is, and understanding where are the places that we can turn the knobs a little bit, the big needle movers, improving their prime costs, improving their food costs, or improving their labor costs. What are our biggest costs and biggest expenses, and where can we turn that knob to have the biggest impact on the bottom line? That's really kind of the first step, helping them understand where are we missing the opportunity to improve the bottom line. And then the next step is building that, perfecting that in one or two locations. Most of our independently owned restaurants are in one or two locations. They have designs for growing. They want to open more locations or open more concepts, but let's figure out where the current business is, improve the current business, perfect that current business, and then grow. And in the same vein, a lot of small business owners get in trouble where their entire focus is on increasing the top line. I want to increase sales. I want to increase sales. I want to increase revenues. But they haven't figured out how to turn that revenue into a bottom line profit. And by increasing revenues, they're just putting more and more stress and more pressure on the current operation without figuring out how to make that the most profitable business it can be.
Okay, so let's dive into that and really get real practical about that, right? Because by the way, I used to work for a cheesecake factory for a couple of years as a server, and the systems and the processes, the procedures was phenomenal. I mean, I felt like I got a fire hose of education for those 2 years, and I loved it. It was intense. It was high energy, and it was a really competitive server job at the time, and and I just saw how much they focused on the systems and the processes and the procedures, right? So walk us through an example of like, hey, you're just increasing the top line, but you're putting too much pressure and it's really not helping to get the profits better in a restaurant.
Um, so one of the areas that we focus on first is on the labor side, and managing labor and managing the labor cost it's not an exact science. It's more of an art than a science. But it's understanding what is your ideal schedule for productivity in your restaurant. And a lot of it depends on the style of restaurant. Are you a fine dining? Are you a fast casual? And we usually don't work too much with fast casual. We're more of a full scale, full service dining room type of a restaurant. Um, but anyway, perfecting that labor schedule on a week to week basis so that they are serving their customer experience level that they want, and at the same time building efficiencies in the workflow. And it is systematizing all those processes, everything from how do you want the dining room set up before you even open, how do you want all the table settings set before you even open, and detailing out that step-by-step process with it. And it could be something as simple as checklists. I'm sure you use some checklists when you were working at Cheesecake Factory. And there are some certain minimum checklists that you have to meet before you're getting a passing grade on what you're doing.
100%, right. So it sounds like serving customers and building efficiencies and making sure you're like preparing and prepping as much as you can for the experience prior to the customer showing up, right? And looking for ways to also really clarify what the ideal schedule is for your the employees, the servers, the bussers,
Correct.
the cooks, all of it, what it takes to run, which is dynamic, right? And part of why it's so exciting, I think, to be in the restaurant business, and I know it was for me when I was working inside of it, just to see how much is really going on behind the scenes, right? And how it takes this team to work together, and it's an art and it's science, right? And it's beautiful, it's fun, it's exciting, it's especially when you deliver an amazing experience for people. So, what is it about it that you mentioned? Maybe in the intro, at least I read about it. you grew up. You sound like your parents were in the small business. Like what were they in, and what really drew you to the restaurant business? Why did you choose that?
Yeah, well, I didn't really come from a restaurant background, so that is a little bit unique in trying to be an expert in that field, which we've become over time. My father owned a retail business. Started as a back in the old school five and dime retail business. He built that into an eight store department store type business in small town county seats in Iowa. So every county in Iowa has a county seat. That county seat typically is about 8 to 12,000 people. He built these 25 to 30,000 square foot department stores in those towns and had a pretty thriving business and designs on continuing to grow, had just built a warehouse. And I'm going to get on my Walmart soapbox here for a little bit. Walmart moved through his trade territory. And there's lots of studies done on Walmart and lots of negative papers or white papers or whatever have you want on Walmart, but the truth is they are very predatory when they move into a new territory. They don't care if they're not profitable for the first 2 years. Long story short, he didn't survive that and ended up liquidating his business and shutting down the business. And that kind of, so growing up under that environment, first of all, instilled in me how much business owners are leaders in their communities. And I think you can just look around in your own community. You look at some of the nonprofits. What are most of the boards made up of nonprofits? Small business owners. Small business owners are leaders in their communities. There's so many people who depend on them. Like you said in the intro, your team, your family, your customers, your vendors. And then I saw him go through that bad experience of a larger company with more pull coming through his territory and shutting him down. And so my entire career, I've always wanted to just serve small business owners and help small business owners understand the financial side of their business, understand cash flow, so they can survive the worst possible scenarios as they are thrown at them.
That's powerful. I love that connection there of serving from a heart of the pain, right? That happened with your family, with your father, with the eight stores in Iowa, and in trying to just give an edge for the small business owner. My mom and dad were the small business owner, building houses in the Bay Area of California, and we grew up on a job site, watching him and helping him build these houses, and looking back, it's some of the best memories, right,
Mm-hmm.
that we have, and as the world has moved to more corporate, more there's more corporate, more publicly traded companies that are doing a lot of the things. It is empowering to know that it's encouraging to know that you're empowering small business owners to have an edge. In finances is key, right? If the cash flow and the money doesn't go, it's like the plane that's flying, and then it runs out of fuel, right? And it's going to eventually just nosedive, right? So you've got to have the finances, got to have the cash flow. Okay, so let's dive back into that. So once you've established some of those KPIs, right? Once you established your focus on the labor side, what's the next kind of secret or wisdom that you would leave you would also build on this to build a restaurant to financial freedom?
Understanding the cash flow of each individual location. A lot of when you open a new restaurant, it's pretty capital intensive to build out the interior of the restaurant, to buy equipment, kitchen equipment. It's pretty capital intensive, and most independently owned restaurant owners go through a borrowing process. That debt has to be serviced. So if they're running at the profit margins we mentioned earlier, maybe 5-6% profit margin on $1 million in sales, they've got a $300,000-$400,000 debt on the books. That 5% isn't enough to build a sustainable business in the long run, or to build reserves that they want to have as a resource to continue to grow. So it's really understanding that cash flow. And one of the first steps is building a full scale, full financial projection, forecast, budget, whatever you want to call it. So it's a profit and loss budget, but it's also a balance sheet projection and understanding where cash flow is coming from and when cash flow is needed on a week to week, month to month, and year to year basis. And if you want to grow, if you want to open a new restaurant 6 months down the road, where's the capital going to come from to open that restaurant? And how are you going to service that debt as time marches on?
Okay, so it sounds like you're really getting granular with understanding the cash flow of each location, even down to the nitty gritty of a balance sheet, P&L, week to week, month to month, year to year basis, and budgeting for growth, budgeting for expansion, and really understanding what the true costs are, right, for the capital up front, and the holding costs, the debt costs, the hiring and waiting until the restaurant's profitable. Is that a fair summary so far on that one?
Yeah, correct. As soon as you're borrowing money, you're paying interest on that from the day you borrow it,
Mhm.
and you have to service that debt from the day you borrow it. The restaurant itself might not be up to a three or $400,000 a month business until some time passes and you built that customer base. So you've got to figure out the cash flow from the day it opens to the time that it's actually a sustainable location, a sustainable business.
Got it. Okay, neat. I wonder if we can transition a little bit into capital gains tax deferral. As a CPA, if these restaurant owners, if let's imagine they implement your systems, they're working with you, they're scaling, they're building it from 1 to 3 to 5, maybe 10 locations, and all of a sudden they're a baby boomer, and they're like, man, I want to retire, but if I sell, I'm going to get crushed with capital gains tax. Maybe it's going to be 33% to 50%, depending on depreciation recapture, if it's an S Corp or a C Corp, all of these things that kind of come into complexities here. But ultimately, they want to sell and they're faced with capital gains tax. What would you say, Tim, is the biggest frustration for these restaurant owners that want to sell, but don't have a great solution that's flexible when they go to exit and have the capital gains tax?
Well, it's just that frustration of seeing what they've built over a course of a lifetime and they want to sell it for what they view as the value of that business. And then all of a sudden, like you said, 30% is gone to the government. So it's just that frustration and that angst of seeing I've sold it for 2 million, 3 million or whatever, and I'm only getting 1.5 million out of it.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
it's as simple as that.
Yeah, it's a financial number, right? Exactly. It's a number. That number can represent cash flow and ability to invest. We have a really neat solution. I'm curious what you think about it. It's called a deferred sales trust. It's an installment sale with the trust. Sometimes restaurant owners or small business owners, they feel like they have to finance the buyer, right? Which is the worst thing for the seller
Right.
because the last thing you want to do as a restaurant owner is 2 years later, 3 years later, just when you're getting the groove of retirement, that person is failing the business, and now you're having to foreclose and take the business back, and you're starting over. That's like the nightmare, right? Like if you're selling the restaurant, if you're selling the business, you want to be free from that. And so, but here's the key though: we use an installment sale with the trust. It doesn't require you to finance the buyer. In fact, you ask the buyer to come with all the money, whether they have to get on a loan or they come with cash. Let's just say it's a $5 million restaurant sale, and let's just say the tax would have been about 1.5 to $2 million, right? They're in
Right.
California, right? It's about the number,
Right.
right? And or New York or New Jersey, right? And so they're not sure what to do, right? And instead of financing the buyer, the trust jumps in right in between the seller and the buyer, and it actually buys it for 5 million and sells it for 5 million to the buyer. Okay, and the seller actually finances the trust, and the trust issues a promissory note, let's say at 8% back. But the buyer takes title of the restaurant, they're gone. And the collateral is now at Charles Schwab, and it can be secured against other businesses, real estate, stocks, bonds, mutual funds. But the key is there's an extra 1.5 to 2 million working for them. Okay, so they're diversified, they're liquid, they're tax deferred, and they get to live off the interest that the trust produces. And so let's just say at 8% on 5 million as an example. They're looking at $400,000 of cash flow per year. They'll pay tax on that, but that's better than if they would have paid. Let's say they paid 2 million of tax. They're looking at the same 8%. They're looking at 240,000. So that can be the difference between somebody retiring or having to work more years or whatever it might be for them to make an impact. Any thoughts on that, or have you ever even explored that? I'm just kind of curious.
Quite honestly, Brett, I've never even explored that. You're the first person to open my eyes to that. I'm not so sure I understand the tax deferral part of it. Explain in more detail, how does that work? How is there not a taxable transaction there at the point of sale?
Yeah, because so in IRC 453, which is the tax code, you can sell a property or asset on an installment sale basis, right? Whereas the seller,
Sure.
you
Okay.
become the lender, right? So you're lending the 5 million to the trust. I mean, you're selling it to the trust on an installment, and the trust owes you back the 5 million, right? And the trust immediately sells it for 5 million to the buyer, and so that's how the trust gets the money, right? So the trust bought and sold for the same price, 5 and 5. So there's no gain at the trust level. The trust receives the capital, but it's owed back to you, the seller.
And I'm deferring the tax until the principal payments are coming in and
Yes,
on
sir.
an installment basis.
Yes, sir. And
Right.
the key is most of our clients, they structure it with interest only payments or partial interest payments, right? And they actually will even delay the income for a couple of years if they want to defer the income tax. And so, like probably 99% of our deals, let's say it's a $5 million exit, they'll take partial interest payments starting about year 2 or 3, and they'll let the other amount accrue. So let's say it's an 8% note. They'll take 4 or 5% interest starting in year 2. They might even start it right away. It's their money, whatever. But they only pay interest, only pay tax on the interest they receive. That's ordinary income. If they dip into principal, but most don't dip into principal. They just live off the interest, right? And that's the cool thing. And you can pass it on to kids, and you can keep the note going for a long time. You can also partner with it and do your own business deal, because sometimes a restaurant owner might want to sell the restaurant, but he might want to buy an apartment complex. He might want to start a restaurant with his son or daughter or grandchild. He might want to do something different that's not requiring him to do it all himself, where he can still diversify and have some retirement or some flexibility. So it can also be for the entrepreneur. It doesn't just have to be the person who wants to retire. It's very flexible, which is what I love about it.
And that principal is guaranteed and is never in danger.
So the investments can be put into investments that are very secure.
Okay.
Yeah, it's up to you. You can put it into T-bills. We had clients sit in T-bills for months and years, honestly, about a year, at least one of them, like making about 5% in the T-bills. We've had people sit in money markets. We've had people put it into insurance or annuities. I would say the majority, Tim, are liking a balanced portfolio of some real estate, some securities, but everyone's risk tolerance is a little different. None of the funds are ever invested unless you approve of it. So you have to approve of it, and you have a risk tolerance questionnaire. We work with certified financial planners. We have all the whole thing set up.
Gotcha.
But the point is, yeah, it's typically a diversified portfolio.
Okay.
Yeah, and if people
Okay.
want to know more about that, by the way, go to capitalgainstaxsolutions.com. That's capitalgainstaxsolutions.com. Next question is this. The industry's changed, right? Or it's changing. It's always changing, but I feel like restaurants in particular with COVID, with the changing of even just the apps, the apps that deliver the food, right? All of those things, the Uber Eats and the Grubhubs and all those things. So just talk about how it's changed in the last 5 years, and then how you guys are adapting with that to help people be more profitable.
Yeah. I'll just start with what you just mentioned last and the Uber Eats and all the delivery apps. The restaurant owner has to be aware of how much that's costing them, how much that's impacting their gross profit margin on every item on the menu. And a lot of restaurant owners will have, if you order online and you go to Uber Eats, they can customize that so their pricing when someone buys an Uber Eats is a little bit higher than if they walk in the front door. And it really needs to be because there is that additional expense. The biggest things that has changed since COVID is the cost of labor. That's gone up drastically. And you're in California, and that there's a governmental reason why that base labor has gone up drastically, the minimum wage requirements. But labor has gone up a lot, and they just have to put more emphasis on building those ideal schedules and understanding what their labor costs are and understanding if they have to make price increases on their menus. With inflation, their hard product costs have gone up exponentially in the last 2 or 3 years as well, and that changes more rapidly. So what we're trying to help our restaurant owners do is understand each menu cost, each cost of the item on their menu, all their menu items, build detailed menu costing analysis and understand where their costs are coming in on a week-to-week basis. And they may need to be looking at price changes on a weekly basis, whereas 3 or 4 years ago, it was sufficient to look at their menu pricing on a monthly or quarterly basis and maybe adjust then. And there's AI tools out there too that they can use to be on top of what those costs are and how they're changing on a weekly basis so that they have information on the cost of a prime steak has gone up 10% in the last 2 weeks. We probably need to bump up our menu item on that, our menu pricing on that to keep up with the cost. And their customers just need to understand that we're just trying to keep up with inflation and we're just trying to keep up with our labor costs. And we still want to bring you the best product. And this is the most efficient way we know how to do it.
Yeah, I picture a plane, right? And you're flying the plane and you're the pilot, and all of a sudden, like you're going over to turbulence and then the fuel's going down or something's happening and something's blinking on the screen and you've got to make adjustments, right? You got to make adjustments. And as a business owner, like we've got to have a way to view what's happening, what's changing, right? Because otherwise, you're right. It's like this the silent bleeding of the cash flow off of the increased labor costs, off of the increased, supply and product cost. And if you're not making adjustments, then math kicks in, and gosh, you're looking up and you go, how are we not profitable, or how are we less profitable? Well, that's why, right? Because you didn't have the gauges on the screen of the plane, and you're way off course. Is that a good
Right.
analogy? Or what do you
Yeah.
think, Tim? Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. And we mentioned earlier competing with the big boys. The mom and pop's ability to do that is increasing more and more with automation and AI tools. They can be on top of what's happening in the marketplace. And as a smaller entity, they can sometimes make decisions faster than the bigger companies. They can make menu pricing changes faster than the bigger companies. So there is some agility and some advantage to being a smaller business competing against the bigger ones.
Oh man, I love that, right? Yeah, look at it as advantageous. If you're the small business owner, get nimble, move quick, use technology to your advantage. You gotta do that to scale. We're
Correct.
running out of time. Are you ready for the lightning round?
Sure.
All right, knowing what you know now, if you could go back to your 20-year-old self with the one golden nugget, make sure to tell yourself to do.
I would tell myself to pick a niche and focus quicker. There's so many advantages to focusing on a niche and becoming an expert in that area.
What's the number one secret to having the courage to do that and the fortitude to stick to it?
Wow. Then say that question again.
What's the number one secret to having the courage to do that and the fortitude to stick to it?
Seeing those niche clients that you do onboard and understanding how much more profitable it is to be in that niche than it is to try and serve everybody and please everybody.
Excellent. Love that. Next question. Number one book you've recommended or gifted the most in the past year?
I didn't hear the question.
Number one book you've recommended or gifted the most in the past year?
In the past year, I don't have a good answer for you on
That's
that.
okay. It could be a podcast, could be a YouTube channel, it could be really anything.
Um, Pass.
Okay,
I
that's
don't have a
okay.
good answer for you on it.
Okay, yeah, we'll cut that question out on the show. Next question is this for the lightning round. Number one leadership quote or theme that you strive to live by.
Number one leadership quote or theme that I strive to live by. Um, and it's real, I don't know that it's a leadership theme or quote, but focus on today, forget about yesterday, focus on today and what you can improve and make incrementally better today.
Love that answer. Next question. Number one way that you're using AI or Chat GPT.
Really just on an everyday basis on how to deal with answering emails, how to structure a proposal, anything that can move you from the blank page to having something that you can edit. Staring at the blank page is the worst time waster there is. Use ChatGPT or any of the AI tools. to have a starting point where you can edit and work backwards.
I love that way. Yeah, it gets the momentum, gets it primed, gets the pump primed, it gets the things flowing, gets energy moving, gets something there where you can start. And I think that's key. That's great insight. Last question, right? And it really has to do with practicing stewardship over ownership, right? And making a difference, making an impact for people. I'm curious, how do you practice stewardship over ownership? What does that mean to you? And then maybe what's a cause or a group, or how are you helping give back to the community?
Stewardship over ownership, I think, starts from looking internally and taking care of your team and understanding that making sure your team understands that one of my priorities is making sure that you have a good work environment and that you understand we're about having a positive impact on our customers. And I want to give you the best tools you can use to do that, to have a positive impact.
I love that. Tim, it's been a pleasure to get to know you over the podcast. I want to thank you for sharing your wisdom with us. I want to encourage you to keep helping fight for the small business owner, right? Especially in the restaurant, as you've niched down to help them make sense of numbers, make sense of profits, make sense of them trying to make an impact for themselves to build financial freedom and make an impact. For our listeners who want to get in touch with you, or people want to reach out to you to help with your services, where can they find you?
They can find me on LinkedIn, Tim Sernett. Or financialopticshq.com is our website, or just Google Financial Optics, accounting and bookkeeping services.
Awesome. Thanks, Tim. Also want to thank all of our listeners for listening to the episode of the Build It to Billions podcast. As always, we really are focused like a laser on guiding and helping entrepreneurs and investors on their journey from millions to billions. We believe that the key to scaling your business and compounding your wealth starts every single day with a mindset practice of stewardship over ownership and applying billionaire biblical principles. Our ultimate goal to help you scale and compound your wealth and life so you can give more or all of it away to MVPs. Hey, don't forget about the book, Building a Capital Gains Tax Exit Plan, especially if you're looking to sell a highly appreciated asset. You don't want to get caught paying massive amount of capital gains tax. In fact, you can go to Amazon right now and pick it up. It's a best-selling book, which is cool. We have Kevin Harrington from Shark Tank in the book and a number of other really smart people there in the book. But basically, it's the proven playbook for unlocking your ideal wealth plan when selling any asset of any kind for yourself or for your clients. Check it out. It works for Bitcoin. It works for businesses, real estate, and stock. You can sell, defer capital gains taxes, and live off the cash flow. Really neat. Check it out on Amazon, Building a Capital Gains Tax Exit Plan, or just go to capitalgainstaxsolutions.com. Appreciate everyone listening or watching out there. Please share this with someone it could be of inspiration to, and we will talk to you all again real soon. Bye now.